Okay, we are on chapter 7. Chapter 7 means week 7, and week 7 means that next week will be week 8. Now, if you recall, we're taking about a chapter a week as closely as we can follow that. Even though all of the assignments are open, I hope that no one is procrastinating and will want to complete the entire first half of the semester in the last couple of days and then run into trouble and then it really gets to be fun, folks. It really does. But anyway, I'm happy to be back with you again talking about mood disorders and suicide. One thing about mood disorders is that they are quite prevalent. Depression, as it says here, to the psychiatrist, is like the common cold to the medical doctor, meaning that it is all around. One of the terms, and it is quite prevalent also, but one of the terms that we have is a flat affect. I found that this is particularly true, well, not only with adults, but I visited with children, and some children at the age of 4 and 5 just did not display any type of emotion. And we call that a flat affect. Now, adults can fit in this category as well. There's no question about that. And so I wanted to bring this term out to you. So when you hear it again, a flat affect, yeah, that means emotions are not evident, emotions are not showing. We're just backing up a little bit. In infancy, we have three temperaments at birth. One is easy, and I'm sure that you can relate maybe in part to these, and then maybe there's a combination of some of these. But one is an easy child, easy to get along with. One is difficult, very difficult to get along with. Seems like they're always opposing what a person is doing. And then slow to warm up. You know, these are the individuals, the infants that or toddlers that may stand by their mom or dad when a stranger comes in the room and eye the stranger. But then if the stranger reacts in a positive way, they finally warm up to the stranger. Those are the three main temperaments that we have. And like I say, you might even have a combination of those three. And you could have some that you even might add to this list. Now, a temperament, there's a difference in this aspect as far as a temperament is concerned. A temperament is somewhat lifelong. Easy temperament, somewhat lifelong. Difficult, slow to warm up. These are lifelong types of behavioral characteristics. Now, when we talk about a mood in this context, which is a little bit different than our mood disorder, but when we talk about a mood in this context here, imagine the temperaments as a season. We have summer and fall and winter and spring. So that would be a temperament or an equivalent of a temperament. And then we have moods. And the mood then could be equated to a weatherman forecasting the weather for the next couple of days. It's going to be hot and sunny. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be cloudy. We're going to have a foot of snow. That is a mood. That can vary from day to day. So temperaments are overall kind of set, but the moods can change. Now, I do not want to confuse that with the mood disorders. And the first mood disorder there that we're talking about, we have the mood disorders, is depression. And as your text describes it, depression is like falling into a dark pit, a dark hole, calling for help, and there's no one to help. Depression is also known as unipolar. And then we have dysthymia, which is a lesser depression, but dysthymia can be lifelong. Now, that describes that. Bipolar, we have bipolar 1 and we have bipolar 2. That used to be called manic depressive disorder. Now it is bipolar, and the reason it's bipolar is because one moment they may be up and feeling great, and then after a while they may become very depressed. The difference between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 is that bipolar 2 may not have quite as high as an effect in the manic episodes. These manic episodes can go very high. They can think they're God and they can walk through walls. That's how high they can go. I know one individual who, in a manic state, would max out the credit cards buying neckties. Neckties for around here, which I'm not wearing. That's all he buys. He'd go to store after store after store buying neckties. And after a while, of course, their marriage did not survive that, because after a while, they didn't have money for anything else because he bought these neckties. Then we have cyclothymia. Cyclothymia is a bipolar type condition, but not as severe as the regular bipolar. So bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, the difference again between those two, bipolar 2 will not have the high manic episodes that bipolar 1 has. We look at these various abnormal behaviors that we have, but we always don't really understand how serious they really are. So I'm going to go through an excerpt that has taken place. You may be well acquainted with it. It is graphic. I'm going to say it is graphic, but I really do believe that it's time to really come to grips with what is taking place. Now, this young lady, let me tell you about her. She was a class valedictorian. She was captain of the swim team. She was an officer in the National Honor Society. And she completed a 2-year nursing program. Now, this individual's first name was Andrea. And this probably rings a bell, Andrea, but I'm going to go ahead and read just a little bit about her. I have here Andrea married an individual by the name of Russell Yates, or Rusty Yates. And of course, from this then, we have Andrea Yates, and I suppose that if you recall, she drowned her five children. Okay, this is the call that was made by Andrea around 10 a.m., June 20th, 2001. Rusty Yates was already at work. Andrea called him up and says, "You need to come home." And Rusty asked, "What's going on?" And she just replied, "It's time I did it." And Rusty thought for a minute and asked the question, "Is it the children?" Now a chill shot through him because he was starting to make connections. And he said, "Which one?" And she responded, Andrea responded, "All of them." And he dropped everything that he was doing. He was an engineer for NASA. And he went to his home in time to see his wife put in handcuffs and led to the police car. Now, when this took place, Rusty Yates, the dad, went into a fetal position on the lawn and pounded his fists on the lawn. Okay, here comes the graphic part. She was asked, "Who killed your children?" by a police officer. Andrea replied, "I killed my children." "Why did you kill your children?" "Because I am a bad mother." And so this went on for a number of minutes. She goes on to explain she got out of bed around a little after 8, waited for her husband Rusty to leave for work. Then one by one she drowned her 3 sons, starting with Luke, age 2, Paul, age 3, John, age 5, and then Mary, a 6-month-old. And then she drowned the oldest one, who was 7 years old at the time. And she said she had to chase the 7-year-old, and she did struggle with him for a few minutes to get him to keep his head out underwater. This is gruesome. Now, her oldest son was Noah, and she put Noah's head under the water, and he got away from her, and he raised his head back up, and he hollered out, "I'm sorry." This was Noah, 7-year-old boy. "I'm sorry." What he was referring to, I don't know. And that was the last words that he uttered, and his head was pushed underwater. When the police came to the scene, now she took the first 3 boys and she put them on the bed and covered them up. But when the police came on the scene, the tub had Mary floating in it, and it was full of feces and urine and vomit. I know this is a gruesome picture, but I think it's time to look at some of the abnormalities and just see the activity and the behavior that takes place, and I think why there's a compelling reason to look at these various disorders. Now, I'm not going to make another video, but I'm going to go through here, and you can read this on in your text here about premenstrual dysphoric disorder, seasonal affective disorder, and the learned helpless theory. And remember then that when we get into suicides, that more men than women actually take their own lives, except in China. And the reason for this, in China, it has been somewhat of a tradition, if you can call it a tradition, that women were more apt to take their life. And this goes back in history. And you can read this in the text then. One of the things that we want to look at is hallucinations and illusions, and we'll talk about this some more. But a hallucination is anything you can take in through your 5 senses. You can smell, hear voices, and this type of thing. A delusion is a misguided thought process. Now, one of the things, even in bipolar disorders, we can have hallucinations and delusions. We can also have it in schizophrenia. So it's interesting the way we are able to tell the two apart. Okay, this concludes this video on Chapter 7 on moods. And I hope that you're coming along with your studies, keeping up. I really do. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me. I want to work in the chat room. And any area, any resource that we have, any questions that we have, we're here to learn about abnormal psychology in its fullest. So until Chapter 8, which again will be the last chapter of the first half of the semester, hope all is going well, and we'll see you at Chapter 8.